Okay, my friends, so we're officially entering maybe the last section of our unit here, which is inequalities. And I want to be able for us to understand them. I thought maybe one of the ways that we can do this is try to make sense of this problem here. So what age of people can vote? So how old do you need to be able to vote? Well, if you Google this, it turns out people need to be at least 18 years old. When I say at least, I mean the word at least means that you can be 18 and then 19, 20, 21, and you can go on forever, right? So when you hear the word at least, that means 18 and above. As long as you're 18, it doesn't matter how old you are after that. There's no cap limit. You can always vote. You have to be at least, but you cannot be 17 years old. Right? That's just the law. You can't be 17 and vote. You have to be 18. So what age of people can vote? Well, people need to be at least 18 years old. How do we show that symbol? Well, they need to be at least, it can be 18 or above. So let P be person's age. So the way we can represent this is P, okay? We need people to be greater than or equal to 18. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this here, but you might have heard this a long time ago, that alligator thing where it's pointing out or in like that. So P means this. So the person's age, since P represents person's age, the person's age needs to be bigger than or equal to 18. As long as you're equal to 18, you're fine, or you're bigger than 18, you're going to be fine. If you're not sure, the way I like to think of this is I like to put 3 little dots at my inequality and ask yourself, well, which side has more dots? Well, the left side has more dots, so that means P is bigger than 18, or 18 is smaller than P. Okay, just the way that you could read it. If it's like this, well, I make my 3 dots. Well, which side is bigger? Well, this side. So this means 18 is bigger than P, or P is less than 18. But anyways, here's our answer on a number line. We fill in the circle when you have this equal to. Well, you can be equal to 18, and then we fill it in this way that you can be as long as you're older. Notice how to the left is completely blank because you cannot be any of these ages to vote. Okay, describe the ranges of temperature that water is frozen. So I don't know what this is, so I'm gonna Google this on my phone. Temperature that water is frozen. So describe the range. So at what temperature does it freeze? Well, it turns out okay, so scientists have found liquid water as cold as -40 degrees and even cooler, blah, 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 blah. At what temperature does water freeze? Well, at 0 degrees. 0 degrees Celsius, okay? So let's just find what is the temperature that water gets frozen at? What does it need to be? Well, my friends, it needs to be at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, here's the thing. What if we're at -4 degrees? Well, it's still going to be frozen, right? It's going to be just as long as if you get colder and colder and colder, that's fine. But the minimum is 0 degrees, and you can be at 0 degrees, or you can be even lower at -1, -2, -3 degrees. It doesn't really matter, but as long as it gets smaller and smaller. So describe the range of temperatures water is frozen. Well, less than or 0 degrees Celsius. Okay, how do we answer that in symbol? Well, let's define temperature. Since we're talking about temperature, we'll put T is equal to temperature in Celsius. So how do we answer this in a symbol? Well, we'll say our temperature has to be less than or equal to 0. Okay, again, less than like this. Let me write over here. How do I know this is less than? Well, I'll make my 3 dots here, and which side has more dots? Well, the right side, so you know this side has less. So T, the temperature in Celsius of water, is less than or equal to 0. As long as it's less than or equal to 0, the water will freeze and become an ice cube. How do we show that on the equation? Because it has the equal to symbol, we fill it in like this, and as long as it's anywhere cooler than 0 degrees, you know water will freeze and turn into an ice cube. But if you're above that, it will always stay liquid. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and just, at least now that we got a few problems like that, let's go ahead and make a graph to represent each inequality here. So notice how this is x is less than 4. Why is it less than? Well, I like to make my 3 dots, like I briefly mentioned, and we know since this side has 2 versus this has 1, this means x is less than 4. Does it have the equal to symbol? No. And since it does not have the equal to symbol, we like to just fill in a circle here. This means that it's not equal to 4. It has to be less than 4. So since it's less than 4, we know that's heading towards the left, and we can fill it in. Okay, let's take a look at problem number 2. When x is greater than or equal to -5. How do I know it's greater than? Well, greater because I like to make my 3 dots. And because this has 2 over 1, I know this means bigger, and this has this line, which means equal to. So we need to be bigger than -5. That means think about numbers bigger than -5. Well, that's just more positive numbers. And since it has the equal to symbol, we fill it in, and we're just going to the right. And boom, there it is. So let's go ahead and see if we can write an inequality to represent these 2 graphs. Well, how would I say this in words? Well, in this problem here, it's equal to -5, but less than. I should say and less than. Notice how it's filled in, so that means it's equal to, but less than. So we know x has to be less than. Well, I make my 3 dots. I know this has to be less than because it's only 1 dot compared to 2, and I'll go ahead and put my inequality like that, okay? Equal to -5. So x is less than or equal to -5. Let's go to this one here. Well, what do you notice about this right here? It's filled up, so that means it cannot equal -1, and it's bigger than -1. Okay, obviously I wrote that terribly, but we can be bigger. So x, we need to be bigger. I'll put my 2 dots over here, my 1 dot here. I know the 2 means it's bigger, so x is bigger than -1, and I do not put this little symbol down below because it's not equal to. Okay, and that is pretty much it, my friends, with inequality. So let's take a look here. Maybe this last example. Down below are 2 equations. Which one do you think is the correct one for the graph? Well, this says y has to be bigger than 4. Since this is my y-axis, notice how we made this shaded region to be up above as long as we're bigger than 4. Okay, and even on this other graph, this makes sense. It has to be bigger than 4. Okay, but we want to match these graphs together. Well, notice how this has a dotted line versus this has a solid line. So when it has this solid line here that you see with no dots, that means it can be equal to 4. Well, which equation has the symbol to represent equal? Well, this one. So we know this graph is y is equal to or greater than 4. This graph over here has to be y is greater than 4. Why? Well, because whenever we see these dotted lines here, that means it cannot equal 4, but it can be bigger than 4. So that's just to show you how it looks like on the graph. So that graph would match there, and this one would match here. And so last but not least, let's graph these. Y is less than 5. So where's 5? Well, 5 is right here, so it needs to be less than 5. Does it has the equal to symbol? It does not. So we need to make a dotted line like that. Obviously my dotted lines are not perfect, and now we need to be less than 5, so we will shade it down over here. Okay, what about the one to the right? Well, y is less than or equal to 5. That means we can fill it in. Here's 5, and we're going to basically fill in everything underneath that. And boom, 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 and there it is, my friends. Okay, hopefully this helps you out. We'll go over some more advanced problems on the next